So he'd slipped away from Gabriel and Alasdair's wedding breakfast and left London. With Gabriel married, he'd succeeded to the title of principal matrimonial target for the ladies of the temps. Consequently, he'd dismissed all invitations to the summer's country house parties. He'd driven to Quiverston Manor, his parents' estate in Somerset. Leaving his groom Dodswell, a local, there to visit with his sister, he had left Quiverston early this morning and headed south through the countryside. On his left, 3 cottages came into view, huddled around a junction with an even narrower lane that ambled down beside a ridge. Slowly he passed the cottages and rounded the ridge. The village of Collerton opened out before him. Reining in, he looked about, and inwardly grimaced. He'd been right. From the looks of Collerton, his chances of finding any local lady with whom to dally, a married one who met his exacting standards and with whom he could ease the persistent itch all Cynsters were prey to, were nil. Abstinence it would be. The village, neat and tidy in the bright sunshine, looked like an artist's vision of the rustic ideal, steeped in peace and harmony. Ahead to the right, the common sloped upward. A church stood on the crest, a solid Norman structure flanked by a well-tended graveyard. Beyond the graveyard, another lane ran down, presumably joining the main lane farther on. The main lane itself curved to the left, bordered by a line of cottages facing the common. The sign of an inn jutted over the lane just before it swung out of sight. Nearer to hand was a duck pond on the common. The blacks stamped and shook their heads at the quacking. Quieting them, Lucifer looked to the left, to the first house of the village standing back in its gardens. A name was carved on the portico. He squinted. Collerton Manor. His destination. The manor was a handsome house of pale sandstone, 2 stories and attics in the Georgian style, with rows of long pedimented windows flanking the portico and front door. The house faced the lane, set back behind a waist-high stone wall, and a large garden filled with flowering plants and roses. A circular fountain stood at the garden's centre, interrupting the path joining the front door and a gate to the lane. Beyond the garden, a stand of trees screened the manor from the village beyond. A gravel drive skirted the nearer side of the house, eventually leading to a stable set back against more trees. The drive was separated from a shrubbery by an expanse of lawn punctuated here and there by ancient shade trees. Somewhat overgrown, the shrubbery extended almost to where the curricle stood. A glimpse of water beyond suggested an ornamental lake. Collerton Manor looked what it was, a prosperous gentleman's residence. It was the home of Horatio Wellham, the reason Lucifer had chosen Collerton as his temporary bolt-hole. Horatio's letter had reached him 3 days ago. An old friend and his mentor in all matters pertaining to collecting, Horatio had invited him to visit at Collerton at his earliest convenience. With the grand dames turning their sights on him, convenient had been immediately. He'd grasped the excuse to disappear from the social whirl. At one time he had haunted Horatio's house in the Lake District, but although he and Horatio had remained as close as ever, over the 3 years since Horatio had moved to Devon, they'd met only at collectors' gatherings around the country and in London. This was his first visit to Collerton. The blacks shook their heads. Their harness clinked. Straightening, gathering the reins, Lucifer was conscious of a welling impatience. To see Horatio again, to clasp his hand, to spend time in his erudite company. Colouring that anticipation was Horatio's reason for asking him to visit, a request for his opinion on an item that, in Horatio's words, might tempt him even to extend his collection beyond his preferred categories of silver and jewellery. He'd spent the drive from Somerset speculating on what the item was, but had reached no conclusion. He'd learn soon enough. Clicking the reins, he set the blacks in motion. Turning smartly in between the tall gateposts, he drew the curricle up by the side of the house, with the usual crunching and stamping of hooves. No one came running. He listened, and heard nothing but the sounds of birds and insects. Then he remembered it was Sunday. Horatio and all his household would be at church. Glancing up the common, he verified